Welcome to Gray Maybe, a podcast and social experiment based on this season's topic, abuse. My name is Jillian Schmitz. I'm a professional dancer, actor, teacher, author, artist, mother, and cat lover. Through my own personal journey of recovery, I've found that things aren't just black or white, or a simple yes or no. For me, in my recovery, there has been mostly gray area and a lot of maybes. In most of my stories, you can find the gray maybe. I will be sharing my own process through personal stories and interviews with others in an effort to destigmatize, bring awareness, and find recovery from many types of abuse. If you'd like to share your story, please email graymaybestories@gmail.com. graymaybestories@gmail.com. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please subscribe on whichever platform you're using to catch future episodes of Gray Maybe. A note before we begin. My stories and the stories of others on this podcast are told through the lens of our own experience. The revelation of our process is ours to tell. If you disagree with the views or stories on this podcast, know that we are not speaking on anything other than our own experiences and viewpoints. Take what you like and leave the rest. Nothing expressed or mentioned in this podcast is an endorsement or is meant to be taken as advice. It is strictly the sharing of our own experiences and our own recovery. Any feelings this podcast activates in the listener is for the listener to process and recover from. Any criticism you have based on these experiences and choices are yours, and they are not anyone else's burden to carry. Trigger warning: abuse, sexual assault, physical abuse, grooming, rape. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Gray Maybe. If you're a new listener tuning in for the first time, thank you so much for deciding to take that step and listen to this episode in particular. If you are a repeat listener, someone who comes back again and again and again, I can't thank you enough. You know, I love my ride or die homies, so thanks for coming back and continue to listen and support. Today, I have a very, very close friend of mine on the pod. She's been on the pod before. I'm so blessed that she's in my life, and I don't know, I'm going to say a bunch of stuff about her, but just, she's a good homie. She's a very, very, very close person to me. We met at the Performing Arts Center, which is a dance school in Van Nuys, California. She was a teacher of mine. She's been a long-term, lifelong mentor of mine. I like to attribute a lot of my dance style to her, a lot of my, learning stuff, mentor, business stuff in the professional world to her. She's also a really a life mentor, someone who just is constantly kind of evolving their own situation and has really good suggestion and life advice. She's had an incredible dance career. She is still dancing. She's an incredible teacher, still teaching. She is a real estate agent. She has also a podcast that I've listened to that's really great, that's available and on Spotify. I'm trying to think of all the other things. She is very active in the We Spark community, the Cancer We Spark community. We're doing a show for her coming up for that. Her and I are dancing in a show coming up as well at the PAC. So I'm going to throw it to her. But this is my friend Terri Yates. She was in season 3. Was that season 3? No. Yes.
What?
Last season.
Yes.
Terri Yates. Terrence Yates. Terri Yates, welcome back to Gray Maybe.
Yay. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
you were in last season. Season 3, grief. Yes.
Yes.
Which is interesting because
As
yesterday was, yeah, I know. Well, that's all you can do really is you're so sad you laugh. Yesterday was the 7th year anniversary of your mom's passing, which was what we talked about a lot in last season. That's your major grief story that you wanted to talk about. So it's kind of interesting. We're meeting today, right around that time.
Yeah.
I know. Well, you said
It's
this year
all
was a
good.
rough one. You said this year was a rough
It
one, and we talked
was
about it that we thought it might have to do with everything that's kind of going on that's causing
the
kind of like
energy in
extra,
our world. Yes.
yeah, a little extra inflammation to the grief. um so yeah, okay. So what else is there anything did I miss anything that you want to add that you want to give a shout out to?
No, we'll put like we can put the link to the We Spark
Yes.
activity on so that if people want to donate as well, because believe it or not, people are still going through cancer. We have people here that have, lost their homes, but
Yeah.
there are people that have lost their homes that are still needing care.
Right.
So I'm really excited because my family is matching donations up
Amazing.
to my sister says 5,000. I said 2,500. I'll let her do the math. And but we're actually sending that half of the money to Living Beauty, which was another cancer support system for women. We Spark addresses families as well as whoever has cancer. So it can be male, female, and then it also addresses the families that are struggling as well with the diagnosis. And Living Beauty is all for women. So they're situated in Pasadena, where a lot of these women were living in Altadena and Pasadena from the fires. So they have a whole group of that they're taking care of with the money. So our money that we're matching is going to Living Beauty. So we're doing it for both of them.
Amazing. And we will
Yeah.
link all of that information in the show notes. So if you have someone in your life or if you yourself are going through cancer or you need some support to deal with your issues with dealing with someone going through cancer
Yes.
because it's very stressful and scary and all those things, these are really great programs. Terri's been involved in We Spark for many years. We've done a lot of fundraising, I've danced in your shows and stuff for We Spark. It's
Right.
always been really, really great. So all of that will be linked. We will utilize all of that. So
And
to
last thing I want to say
yes, please.
about that, even though whenever this comes out, the link will last all year long.
Yes.
So
Okay,
it
good.
doesn't matter when you donate as long as you donate.
Perfect. Perfect. Yes, I
Okay.
assume these organizations take donations all year round, all the time. So,
But my particular link, it will come through for in honor of
okay.
my mother. So
Right.
that link will last all year.
Perfect. And we will make sure we put that one in. Okay. You were here season 3. You're back season 4 to talk about some more shit. Okay.
Yeah.
So, this season, I told you, when we have talked, because we talk often and a lot about abuse. And, I know you two have had several circumstances or little, not little, they're not little, moments in your life that you've talked about different types of abuse. And so I thought, and you're such a great speaker, you're close to me. People like hearing you talk. That's true. People like hearing you talk. We know that as a fact. And so I was like, come on and tell me whatever you want to tell me. There's a couple experiences in my head that I recall you talking about, but I'm going to leave it up to you to what you want to talk about today. So if you would, will you tell me and our listeners a bit about your story or different, your experience with abuse, or abuses or moments of
Mm-hmm.
abuse.
And just for the record, whatever I've told you, because if I forget something, please don't feel like you can't say, ask me. I
Okay.
wouldn't come on here if I didn't feel like I wanted to be completely transparent.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, because the whole point to me is to help anyone that we can
Yeah.
possibly help. I grew, my mother, it started, when my mother had me at 16. So, um, bless her heart, I really am the child of, to harshly put it, a rapist.
Mm.
But he was her mom had died by the time she was 9. So her auntie took care of her, but her auntie was a maid. and so wasn't there a lot. And this handyman came around and, was taking care of things around the house and helping out. And he looked really young, which is why I look so youthful. Um, the only thing good he gave me. But anyway, and he was doing things with her, grooming her basically. We know that now. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
use that word now, but he was grooming
Right.
her basically. And so anyway, he I'm the reason I'm even bringing her up is because it's a common thread of what abusers say.
Mm-hmm.
And he just told her to relax.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as soon as you take your dick out of me, maybe I
Mm-hmm.
can.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
She was 15 years old. My mother really believed you could get pregnant by kissing. She just didn't know any
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
So anyway, and bless her heart, and for my sake, she tried to lessen it, saying, I don't really think he meant it like that or whatever. I was like,
Right. Yeah, but you as a person who grew up in a different time, and even like each generation has become more and more
yeah,
transparent and more educated. Now we have terms like grooming. We're looking for this stuff. We're trying to make the next generation not keep secrets and be
right,
transparent and try to really, in common culture, talk a lot about all the different types of abuses so that people can recognize it when it's happening. But this is several generations removed of people not talking about it, nobody talking about it. Um, and a common thread in a lot of the people that I've interviewed so far have even had the courage to tell people and have kind of been ignored or just been like, oh, don't
yeah,
talk about that, or like, really swept it under the rug or tried to, downplay it, all these things, right? um so I think it's super interesting that your abuse story starts with your entrance into the world,
right,
and it's not that necessarily you uh internalize that as an experience, but that is the entrance, right? That is,
yeah,
where the story starts is, your close connection with your mom and the fact that she was violated.
yes. She, um, and interestingly, people tried to make her give me up, and she refused.
Mm,
So in Buddhism, we talk about you choose your parents or you choose, and I, to a degree, think I chose this woman to come and protect her.
mm-hmm,
Um, so yes, she got away from him because basically he was wandering and had many people to abuse, so he
mm-hmm.
had to
He was a
keep it
serial
moving.
serial abuser, which
Yeah,
most
there you
are.
go.
Let's be
Right.
honest. Like anyone who's abusing someone is typically abusing more than one person. I've never heard of
Yes.
an abuser have one victim only, right?
Right.
Like
No,
they're creating chaos everywhere and
everywhere
over
they
again.
go.
Yeah.
She was 15 and he was 30.
Oh hell no.
Yeah. And but he looked
So young.
really young.
Yeah.
And, you know, her auntie and friends were like trying to set him up. And she's like he's an old ass man.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, fast forward a mere 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, the father of my sisters um, was the first person that I encountered that um, abused me. And at the time, so if I think my mother was 21, 22,
Mm-hmm.
um, she was such a baby.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine having, three, four kids. My sister, my second sister, so it was me and then four girls and my brother. Three girls, so it's four girls and a boy. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, My second sister, her father was abusive, and my mother ran from him.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to kick her in her side with his pointed cowboy boots and
Mm.
pointed toe cowboy boots. And
And you remember this?
oh yeah, but
Yeah,
I was two. But
but you remember.
when he found her, he held a gun to my head to take my sister from her.
Mm.
And she knew he would kill me, so she gave my sister to him.
Mm.
He didn't really want her. He just wanted
Right. It's
to.
just a like so many abusers that file for custody. I'm not saying that every father or mother
Right.
files for custody and to maintain control, but a lot of times children are used as a way to get back at that other person. Right.
Oh,
It's like they
absolutely.
they don't have any intention of wanting to actually take care of or be in this child's life. They solely are doing it to get back at the mother or the father that they're trying to, but most often it is the mother and it's the father doing it.
Right.
So like I heard there was something, this is a little bit off topic, but I just think it's brilliant. There was I believe it was a female judge that when these cases came across her desk, if the most often father or more absentee parent was petitioning to get the child, she was like, cool, let me know what's their diaper size, what time is their bedtime, what time is their that, like all of the things that a primary parent and caregiver would know. And if they couldn't answer those questions, she was like, no,
Love
no.
her.
Right. And if you think about it, that's exactly right. Like if you are in a child's life, you know what diaper size they wear,
Right.
you know what their nap schedule is, you know what their situation is, like you know all of those things. If you don't, you are not as involved as you think you are.
Right.
And you need to check your priorities. But, anyways, like, go on. So, you had
Yeah, no,
these.
no. I'm with you because he literally took her and
Mhm.
gave her to his grandmother to raise, who, by the way, she lived with her brother, who was a pedophile.
Oh my God.
And then, so then my sister's dad, I can, it's interesting how you can still see it when it happened. Like I'm sitting in the car and he's fingering me. So maybe I know you trigger alerted everything before we got
Hmm.
to this. Um, and like took me for an ice cream cone to like make it better. Like that was going to make it better. I remember sitting in the car. It was the gas station. I can still see it. I
Hmm.
can see the lights and
Hmm.
you know and how I felt. And I can still viscerally feel it. Do you know,
Hmm.
have that
Yeah.
feeling of how I felt.
Hmm.
But I, unlike most people, I told my mother
Right.
like immediately. Was it immediately? It may not have been immediately.
But you did, and so many people don't because they're, ashamed,
Well,
so ashamed to.
yes, he was abusing he had a whole other family. And he was much older and he had, so his kids, his one daughter, she got the brunt of it.
Yeah.
And by the time it all came out, he was in jail for who knows what at the time. But I think that my mother would have killed him. So it was best
Hmm.
that he was incarcerated. Uh, but I did tell her. And um, she was very, very protective, but, already tired because she was actually taking care of his kids as well.
Wow.
Because his wife, old ex-wife, who was actually friends with my mom, but my mother was caring for all these kids.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that was the very first time.
Well, and what exactly was she going to even do? Like, let's go back to the time that this happened. Like, were people really being locked up for being, abusers? No,
No,
they had
but
to
no,
like,
she would have just beat I mean, she would have killed him.
right, but like, because what other
Well,
recourse did she really have? Like,
exactly.
let's be honest. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Here's the interesting thing, though. This is the unfortunate part. And not yes and no. Like had so much abuse. I find this later out in life, right? That he
Mm-hmm.
had so much abuse heaped upon him. Physically, he was a drug addict. Like, I mean, there was so much. And as he got clean in his older years, he apologized
Mm.
because he's like, I didn't know. He goes, people get therapy now. People get help now. He goes, I had no one to talk to. I had no therapy. I didn't know how to counteract what was happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like my mother was really good at forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Me, not so much.
When he apologized to you?
He actually apologized through my sister. He
Okay.
told my sister that he was sorry. I had no desire to talk to him.
Got it. Yeah.
I didn't hate him, but I had no desire to talk to him.
You know, the interesting thing is like in 12-step programs, like when you get to like your 9th, 10th step right around there, you do your amends or whatever. But there's this big part about when you make your amends that it's you're not supposed to make amends with anyone that you would harm further by making that amend. So there's a lot of like thought process behind, if I make this amend, is this going to like re-traumatize someone, or is this going to like open up something that someone else didn't even know about it and they don't need to know? And like basically, like, what's the difference between you being indulgent in your guilt of needing forgiveness and what is actually best served for everybody involved, especially the
Mm-hmm,
other person? So I'm thinking,
mm-hmm.
like, you know, like you're saying, I didn't want to talk to him anyways, which, so it's good that he didn't, because if he was in the place of like, I need to relieve myself, it's like, no, 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 fuck off. Like, that's on you. Like, people think that like sometimes coming clean, like, oh, I just gotta get this off my chest, like I need to, is like, okay, that's very narcissistic, you're being very self-centered. Apologizing sometimes isn't always the best thing if it's going to
Right,
re-traumatize or like give you access to someone who's already created a boundary, you know, to not see you, et cetera, et cetera. So go
right.
on.
No, it was sincere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like just I, it, it's just so generationally fucked up, and you know, the lack of education, just how Black people have been treated over the years. I mean, there's just so much. There's so many layers
Mm-hmm.
to his abuse, in particular for him. The mother, like the motherfucker
You can
that
say that.
hit my mother, like my
Mm-hmm.
sister's, you know, the second dad. Um, I don't think I ever really forgave him. We did see him later on in life.
Mm-hmm.
He was in a wheelchair. I was like, good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I
Right.
don't want you to die peacefully. I
Right.
like, you know,
Make it
um,
long and painful.
but yeah, but because it was towards my mother.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't normally feel that way about people, but because it was towards my mother, and she would still have phantom pain in her
Mm-hmm.
side from where he
Mm-hmm.
kicked her
Mm-hmm.
so many times. And when you witness that over and over again, you know, so I think that was when I was really young that that happened to me, and I experienced it, and I experienced the fallout of it. I experienced how it affected my sister.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was awful for
Mm-hmm.
her. Um, you know, but eh, she got help, but it was it needed a lot of long, many years of help.
Well, and a lot of the
Um,
stuff you're talking about is qualifies as like adverse childhood experiences, which Jada talks about. There's like a whole intake that a lot of therapists do, which I'm sure you've done because you've been very open, as I have been. You and I are both big proponents of therapy, and
Absolutely.
you know, just off the bat of what you've talked about, you've nailed, like, you've qualified for like massive, you
Right,
know, adverse childhood experience.
right.
Seeing a parent be abused is like a really big one. And, you know, obviously being, you know, molested, abused, that kind of stuff is obviously a big one. Um, yeah. So they're not light topics, and a lot of the people that I have had on the pod have some childhood stuff, and it really like they talk about how it changes who they are and how they see the world, like that changes the lens they see the world through. And, a lot of them have echoed, like, who would I have been without this, that
Mm,
kind of
mm,
stuff.
mm.
And so it's like it's possible to totally get, some relief and some serenity, but it's hard and it takes a lot of work and it's a lifelong kind of
Yeah.
journey.
It's interesting because I don't know. I have actually never said those words. I wonder what my life would have been like if that had never happened. I've
I,
never, and
I,
interestingly
and
enough, I've never said it.
And the way you look at life and how you move through life, I'm not surprised that you haven't. Like you
I'm
just
like,
like
oh,
like Terry kind of for those of you who don't know her, she's very involved in her I do we want to call it faith? You're Buddhist, you're very
practice. Yeah.
outwardly practice. Yeah, okay, she's very involved in her practice and her community, her Buddhist community. And you know, Terry's the type of person that is like a motivational speaker without that being her job. So like she kind of goes through life kind of raising value wherever she goes and is very like communal. She's a part of many communities and she just like ups the frequency of all the communities, right? Like she just kind of comes in and ups that frequency. So I'm not surprised that thought has never crossed your mind because it's just not how you roll as a person. But yeah, in talking about just adverse childhood experiences, talking to people, how hard it can be, that kind of stuff. All right, I don't want to get you off track. So
No, no,
going
no, no.
forward,
No, it's like that's so true. I just thought I found that ironic. All of a sudden, I was like, oh, I've never asked that. Oh, okay.
I've always
Um,
wondered how much better of a career I would have if I was more delusional, but we don't need to get into that.
there's that. If I had just kept my mouth shut a couple of
if I,
times,
well, and if I just really believed in myself more,
well,
you know?
that's another podcast.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so moving forward.
There's only
Five,
there's
5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old.
Yeah, forward to I'm moving forward to I think high school. So many things took
Yeah.
transpired, and I think we probably talked about some of that at the last pod. The being in the orphanage, and blah blah blah, and then coming home and uh, my mother struggling just to take care of two of us at that
Hmm.
point, and just the lack of support
Hmm.
that's still
Right.
prevalent today
Shit hasn't changed. It hasn't changed.
at all.
We, no, no.
Women have been under assault since day one. Like we got blamed for shit. That fucking apple, that Garden of Eden shit,
It's a
like
really
Garden of
great
Eve shit.
campaign. Really great
Right. I was like,
campaign.
this
Really
has
great
been going
campaign.
on for way too long.
The Scarlet Letter, the witch burning, the
Yes.
fucking, and
Yes.
and still now it's like legally passive, right? It's like the Roe v. Wade stuff, the
Right.
fucking there's no health care, there's no maternity care, there's no maternity care, there's no sorry child care, there's no
Right.
our maternity mortality rate is higher than other developed nations. Like there's just no fucking support. It's still,
Still.
yeah.
And I say that there were two things that made me think of that. One, my mother had to work like second shift, I think it was. Second, she worked second. My mother just had to work,
Hmm.
and uh, there were two times in high school that I can think of that. Anyway, uh, it, we we always lived just on the edge. Like my mother, we weren't in the hood, but you know, um, it's how I learned to say my mommy's not home. It's how I learned how not to deal with,
Right.
you know, because she just didn't want us to live in that kind of situation. And I just remember this apartment we lived in, and down in the parking lot, I was like sitting watching these people have sex.
You're just like watching, like, huh. There's nothing on TV, but this is happening over here.
And I'm like, I wasn't in I, ninth grade. Anyway, I was young. I was,
Yeah.
I can't remember how it
It's
was, but
still
we were,
qualified as child annoyance and indecent exposure.
yes. And yeah, I was just like this. And, and then I remember we lived in this apartment, and my mother had left me a note, and I still have this note.
Oh my gosh.
10th grade, a lot happened in ninth and 10th grade. And I found the note like several months back, and I found it again. I have it, and it's as if it never. It's like it could have been written yesterday. The
Mm-hmm.
paper is still in such
Pristine.
pristine condition. And she said, if you're going to go to such and such, you have to take Kevin with you, take your brother with you, because um, the guy downstairs is going to call if we leave him alone. If you
Right.
leave him alone, he's going to call the cops or whatever. Like,
Right, 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 right.
as opposed to motherfucker asking, does she need some help?
Right.
As opposed to saying, I
Right.
know you have to work. Your daughter's
Right.
in school. You
Right.
know, can I help
Right.
with your son? Can I help in any
Right.
way?
Right. Right.
Anyway, but there was a guy she dated. This was 10th grade, and we were in this townhouse, and he had come by looking for her. She was out. They had broken up. She was out on a date. And I said, she's not here. And I didn't say anything about where she was or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, unbeknownst to me, he had stayed in the area,
Mm.
like stalking, watching for when she
Mm.
came home,
Oh my God.
and then barged in, yelling obscene things and like telling her to take off your underwear. Did you fuck him? Take off your
Oh my
underwear.
God. So
Yeah.
crazy.
And so I run and I get a knife.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, this man used to be a tight end for the Chicago Bears.
Oh my God.
So he wasn't a little man.
Mm-hmm.
And I was tiny. And my mother was tiny, like, 98 pounds. My
Mm-hmm.
mother was always very tiny. So I run and I get this knife and I hold it up to him and I said, I may not live through this, but I promise you will get hurt.
Oh my God. You are so hardcore.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And I was like, I will kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't really things that I should have to say, you know.
No. And as a child to have to go there, that's so hood though. And like you're so not hood, like as a person. Like that's such a hood story. I love it. That is so gangster
He
and real.
left.
Yeah.
He
Because he knew
left.
how serious you were.
Oh
Like a
yeah,
kid ain't doing that and not being serious.
deadly serious. And
Yeah.
and I remember my mom, we were sitting on the stairs afterwards after it all happened, and she said to me, I guess I'll never have to worry about a man abusing you ever.
Mm-hmm.
And she was right, but unfortunately it hardened me.
Mm-hmm.
She nicknamed me hard hearted Hannah at one time because you
Mm-hmm.
had one shot to fuck up and you was out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Well,
I had no to give.
that was your
Um,
self preservation,
it
right?
was. It
Yeah.
was. So it that's why the trauma existed and had
Mm-hmm.
an effect on me. It took me a long time to soften.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even in my dancing,
Right.
it because and it took one time. It was this one comment he said. As our mentor was training me, and he
Mm-hmm.
said, being soft doesn't mean you're weak.
Mm.
And it was like a light bulb went off.
Right. You were like, oh,
Oh, okay. And then every bit of my girl came out. My girlie came
yeah.
out. I was like, I
Yeah.
got in touch with her. But it took a long time for me to
Mm-hmm.
trust you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I could smell a predator
Mm-hmm.
from miles away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But even with all of that,
Mm-hmm.
when I got raped when I was late 20s, 30, something, or something, I didn't realize that that's what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my neighbor next door. And there were three guys that lived in this apartment. I had already lived where I was living, and then they moved in, and you would see each other and blah blah blah. But the two of the roommates would be like, "Yeah, you don't really want to mess with him."
Mm.
But they weren't. I didn't know what they meant. You know what I'm saying?
Right. You're like, oh, he's just, like a bad boy,
Right? Yeah, it just
like a
yeah, it just
rebel.
yeah, it didn't dawn on me that they were like our
They're like,
roommates.
he's a pedophile.
Right?
He's a
He's a flipping
not a pedophile
rapist.
because you were of age, but
Right?
he's an abuser.
Right?
Right.
And I'm like, as I was thinking about this, and about talking to you about it, and that warning shot wasn't
Mm-hmm.
actually enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, let me keep this frame of thought. Hold this right here. Put it in your brain. Bookmark it. Because I just want to put a little PSA out there to men who are hanging out with other men that are abusers. It's time. Okay? It's time.
that's what
If
I
you know
yes,
if you know this about people you hanging out with, number 1, it's immoral for you to continue hanging out with them. Number 2, you are who you hang with. So you are by
complicit.
proxy an abuser. Because the only people who protect abusers are other abusers. Whether you're doing it or not, the fact that you know about that person that has those proclivities, you are just as bad.
Absolutely.
Now, the people who need to hear that are probably not tuning into my podcast, specifically
What?
this
Maybe.
season, but maybe. And you know what? Some of y'all might be abusers yourself and are trying to listen to make sure someone doesn't say your name.
Right.
And
Right.
I hope that paranoia follows you. But listen, okay, so bookmarked. Just saying that PSA for any people who might be listening that are like, oh yeah, that reminds me of my friend fill in the blank. If
Hi.
you have a fill in the blank friend, you need to keep it moving, and that should not be your friend anymore.
And you should have reported it, because here's the thing. I am
Mm-hmm.
sure that other girls said something to these guys,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? They're like, they didn't they didn't act on it. They didn't beat the crap out of him. They didn't, check him. They just like this little, hey, you might not want to.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Right. Right. And I remember saying no, but I'm 5'5"
Mm-hmm.
and 115 at the most pounds. Like,
You were less than that in your late 20s. I've seen video and
110
photos. You were a buck 5 tops, Terry.
maybe.
You're
Okay.
teeny tiny.
I was small. I was very small, and he was 6'4",
Mm-hmm.
6'4",
But I
6'5",
mean,
and
it
he
doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. It was
right.
non-consensual, and there's many
I'm just
ways
saying that
that,
I
yeah,
the fight was that the
not,
fight that I
yeah.
was putting up
Mm-hmm.
was so beyond futile.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because and he played volleyball in the sand, so his legs were incredibly strong. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, he was just there was no fighting him,
Mm-hmm.
and he used that phrase, just relax.
Oh my God. Yeah.
As soon as you get your dick out of my ass, I
Mm-hmm.
think I will be able to.
Mm-hmm. Which is a whole other uh non-consent, right? Like it's
That
one thing to
invasion,
non-consent. Yeah. Yeah.
that invasion was, I literally blocked it.
Yeah.
Like, people say, why didn't they tell sooner? Because You try and convince yourself that it didn't happen,
Yeah.
that all the things you said you would do when it did happen, that you
Mm-hmm.
did none of them,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to forgive yourself for that.
Yeah.
And I even think I told my mom,
Mm.
but I think the way I told the story didn't come
You
across
protected
as
her.
violent as,
You
yeah,
protected her. You protected her from knowing how bad it was.
yeah,
You like needed to tell her because that's always been your connection, but you probably downplayed it so that she wasn't worried about you
right.
or hurt that you were hurt. Yeah.
Like, I, I wished I had not gone to the bathroom. I wish I had saved the semen. I wish I had done so many things that I didn't do because it took so long to realize how absolutely violated I had been.
Yeah. Well, you were busy surviving. It's hard to
Yeah.
do all of the, uh, 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 DNA collection and investigative whatever when you're trying to survive.
Just call
And it's not just
911.
and it's not just even surviving like uh life be like living through it. It's surviving mentally so you can actually function in the world still. There
Yeah.
it's the highest level of self-preservation. I think it's really interesting that people still very much their belief of someone's story hinges on if someone reports it or says
Right.
something.
Right.
When people like, I can think of one collective trauma that everybody endured, that everybody has been real quick to move on from and disassociate from, and that's COVID. Like,
Mm. Mm.
that whole collective trauma of a million
Yeah.
people dying, of
Yeah.
motherfuckers in freezers, of us not having any, like everyone's just stay at home and no vaccine in sight for a while, and race wars in the street. And like that whole year of 2020, people remember it. They're like, yeah, that. But everybody was so quick to move on, forget about it
Right.
selectively,
Right.
push it out of their brain. Like everybody's so desperately wanted to move past that whole thing. It was like that hello right there shows you what the human brain does when they've been traumatized. I just
Right.
want to move on. I just want to get
Right.
past it.
Right.
So to me, I'm like, it makes perfect sense that someone wouldn't report, do whatever. And also,
Right.
like, that's secondary trauma. Like, the last thing you want to do is then go tell someone at a police. First of all, when anything happens, the last thing you want to do is, oh, I got to file a fucking police report. Really? And then you go online. They're like, oh, you got to come in person. And okay, now you're waiting in line at the police. Oh, you got to fill out this form. It's like, come on. Like, I don't even like going to doctor's appointments. I don't like doing my taxes. I certainly don't like fucking filing police report. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
it. I know there's no other way, but it sucks that the impetus is on the victim to do all of this legwork. There's no other way. I get it. Like, abusers are going to abuse, and they're certainly not going to self-report. But
Hey, just want to call and let you
just
know
let you know,
I just raped this girl.
I did it today, and
Yeah. I don't think she's going to say anything, so I thought I'd.
there's just it's easier for me to do because I'm feeling pretty good right now.
Right.
Like,
Got my nuts
I
off.
don't
I'm
know.
great.
This has gotten very dark. This podcast right now has gotten really dark. Um, but okay, sorry. So
No.
I just yes. Okay, so you know the homeboys did you wrong. They shouldn't have been friends with that dude in the first place. You know, it wasn't your fault. It's never someone's fault being
No.
violated.
No.
Consent is a conversation. If it is not enthusiastic, it is not consent. And if it is not continually enthusiastic, it is not
Right.
consent.
Exactly.
Um, so going forward, because I keep pulling us off track.
No,
What?
I helped with that. We were because
Yeah.
we it's a moving anyway, yes, we're fine. Um, I don't even, it did, nothing dawned on me to do what I would tell someone to do
Mm-hmm.
because I was in denial. But I do recall with much clarity how many times I said no.
Mm-hmm.
I recall my face down in this pillow and pulling up and just finally giving in
Mm-hmm.
so it would get over with,
Mm-hmm.
and going home. And it took a long time for me to admit that that's what had happened to me,
Mm-hmm.
that my friend,
Quote
uh,
unquote. Yeah.
yeah, my quote unquote friend hadn't just violated me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um,
And that makes it more complicated too, your friend, right? We all have this idea that like getting, or I think culture, common culture has this idea that like getting raped is a stranger in an alley, you know.
right,
So
right.
you've put yourself in a place you shouldn't be, and this person is a stranger who that's what they do. And like, you know, it's there are rapists among us.
Yeah.
Hello, they have
Hi.
friends.
Yeah.
Rapists have friends.
Yep.
Abusers have friends.
Yep.
So, you know, it makes it more complicated because of how I feel it's packaged and served out in the world. And then also for us in our minds, anybody who's been violated, it becomes very complicated when your, you know, friend, um, significant other, um, ex person, you know, like all the people, you know, teacher, uh, faith leader, you know,
Yeah.
family member, you know, all of these very complicated scenarios that add so much weight to trying to do the mental gymnastics of how to make that okay and go on. Because what other options do you really have other than to continue to traumatize yourself by going forward with getting justice or whatever?
Right. Right. I think, and that's, I think, why I'm such an advocate um, for young women,
Hmm.
because I know how difficult it is. Firsthand experience. I know how difficult
Hmm.
it is to find your voice. Um, just the creepy people, like I worked
Hmm.
for this man like years ago. He was an actuary. I didn't even know what an actuary
What
was.
is that? What is that?
Um, uh, yeah, like I haven't done it in a million years. It has to do with insurance, and um, I'm not going to be explaining it well, so we'll just everybody go look it up.
Okay.
Um, but it was downtown, and I remember he took pictures of me. I needed pictures done, and
Hmm.
anyway, but he was just creepy. Like, do you
Yeah,
know what I'm saying? Like at the
The
end of the
Venn
day,
diagram of photographers and creepiness is there's definitely an overlap. I'm not saying it's a full circle by any
right?
means, but I'm saying the potential for creepiness and creepy behavior is definitely there. Like there's been so
Yeah,
many people I've talked to over time and space that like or think I'm not trying to, you know, come down on photographers because
right.
clearly it's not a
Disparage
full
all
circle. It is
photographers, but
not a
yeah,
full circle,
right.
but there's some serious overlap on that Venn diagram. Okay, yeah. So the creepy,
Yeah,
yeah,
just creepy. I had to quit that job because I was temping, or like it was a temp job, and yeah,
the
he was just
vibes were
creepy.
off. Yeah, the
It was
vibes were off.
so off. Um, and obviously, as we get older, hopefully we get better, we heal. I've had a lot of flipping therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, love therapy,
Mm-hmm.
as you know. But as I've gotten older, I have found my voice to say I don't
Mm-hmm.
hold on to stuff like I used to. Um, I sometimes I take a minute to say it because I want to digest and figure
Mm-hmm.
out what I'm upset about.
Mhm.
Like, what of that is mine, if
Mhm.
anything? Like I take a breath now and I go, I don't want to do that anymore like that because after you've been violated and so much taken from you, it's hard not to just want to be so controlling of everything.
Yeah, of course. Your control's been taken. It's been hijacked.
Right.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to understand why I was late all the time.
Mm.
But part of that was my control.
Mhm.
Even though I may have agreed to be somewhere at a certain point in time,
Right.
I would, all right, I was always trying to get one more thing done before I walked out the door and
Mhm.
like one more thing. And I wasn't going to get back to like, it was like, it's so many layers. There's just not one way um, of how it comes out, like
Right.
how you
It
get affected.
permeates all these different
Yeah,
areas. Yeah, and works its way out in different, yeah.
it does. And so just trying to understand myself better and be kinder and more gentler
Mhm.
to myself and acknowledging the
Mhm.
pain, acknowledging the hurt.
Mhm.
It never ceases to amaze me that I'm fortunate that my uncle is an amazing human being, as you know,
Mhm. I do. I know
and he
Uncle.
loves
Yeah.
you.
I know. He's
Um,
so good.
and my dad, like he's
Yes,
my
dad.
stepdad, but I call him my dad because
No, he's dad. He's dad.
he's dad. He's the only dad I've really ever had. This man claimed me.
Mhm.
He claimed all of us. He met my mother and she had all these kids, that was grown ass kids, but he
Mhm.
claimed us. Um, I guess Robin wasn't grown. I was grown. I was 25.
Mhm.
Um, but there are people that in this world, there are men that are good.
Mhm.
And I have to remember that.
Mhm.
But I never cease to be amazed, which I think is a good thing, by men that just allow things to take place.
Mhm.
It's
The
kind of like when we were
complicity.
talking about racism, like white people have to fix that. Black people
Right.
can't fix that.
Yeah.
Men have to fix this rape culture and
Mhm.
pedophile. They have
Mhm.
to fix that.
Yeah.
It's like the onus on the victims to
Mm.
fix things
Still. Yeah. Mhm.
still. And like, we're busting our asses to do that.
Mhm.
Um, like I just, some I've heard men say it wasn't until I had a daughter that
Yeah.
I,
Which is so frustrating.
yeah, that I
Really? It
finally,
wasn't until you had a
yeah,
daughter that to give a shit
you needed
about
that,
other
right?
human beings, all right? Okay.
Humanity was not on my top of things to do. It was not my list,
Yeah.
top of list
Yeah.
to be human.
Mhm.
So anyway, I mean, like, it's still a fight.
Mhm.
I am better. I can remember long time foreplay was really difficult for me.
Mhm.
Touching me with your hands reminded me of being 5 or 6 years
Mm.
old and being.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I guess I'm lucky it was only fingering as opposed to
I mean, it's violent and it's violating and
it's
it's
violent.
pedophilic and it's
Yeah.
rape and it's
Yeah.
assault and it's your
But it took
first
a long
experience
time.
that wasn't your
Right.
choice and it was, yeah.
Like, don't touch me.
Mhm.
So I've healed a lot, but you don't ever forget.
Mhm.
And I can go back there easily and see and experience it all over again. But at least this time, I know it's not really happening, or I know that I'm okay.
Mhm.
I'm okay. It's not gonna stop me from living my life and being who I am determined to be
Yeah. And
and
on
not
this,
be ruled by it.
right. And on this journey of healing and self-discovery, has there been anything that you've tried that has not helped, or things that have been unhelpful? Because you said therapy helps. I'm guessing your faith, your practice has helped.
Oh, absolutely. That
Community,
was probably
period. You're very communal in you're all about community, communities and community and helping, which is part of service, which is part of healing, a lot of healing.
right.
You're naturally that way, or if it's not natural, it's become habitual for
Right.
you. Um, because a lot of people just isolate. They become more and more isolated.
Yeah.
And you don't have a life that allows you to isolate.
I, you know, depression was huge. So fighting my depression uh, was part of it. And I did isolate. You didn't know when you
Mm-hmm.
saw me, by the time I showed up to teach class at 4 or 5 or whatever it was, that I
Mm-hmm.
had been on my couch all day long and hadn't moved,
Mm-hmm.
hadn't done anything because I was too depressed.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't
Right.
move. So I've had a long journey with depression in that
Mm-hmm.
way, and hiding it
Mm-hmm.
so that no one knew that I was basically functionless and then come and try and tell people what to do and how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think a
And
lot of us that suffer from depression, it's taken us a long time to actually name it and
yeah,
see it as depression.
right,
It's almost like embarrassing, like I'm just so lazy, like I'm so unmotivated, I'm so lazy. But
right,
it's like,
right,
no, there's a difference between choosing to not do some things that you might need to do or want to do and being physically incapable of
right.
moving because of where your mental
Frozen.
state is at. Yeah. And I think it's taken like some of us a really long time to identify that. And so then when it's unidentified, it's really hard to treat, right?
Yeah,
On any level. Mm-hmm.
yeah. That's exactly what was going on. So I don't know if there's anything that hasn't helped me other than you have to wisely choose who you talk to.
Mm,
You
that's good.
know,
That's a good one. Yeah.
some people are not helpful.
Mm-hmm. They're like not safe people to tell
They're
things to.
not safe,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And like sometimes I've just had to go, I don't need you to fix this. I just need you to listen.
Yeah.
Uh, but that comes with time and maturity. But
Mm-hmm.
like trusting that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Like some people say, "Oh, I'm just being." No, 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 no. You may not just be being. They may not be worthy of you sharing all of this. They may
Mm-hmm.
not be safe.
Right.
So be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Be okay with I don't not everyone gets all of me
Mm-hmm.
still to this day. I'm
Mm-hmm.
really clear on how much of me certain people get
Mm-hmm.
because we are not on the same page.
Well, those are boundaries that you've probably curated over time and space.
Over time and space.
Yeah.
So when you don't feel if there's a little twinge of something, you go, no, I don't need to share that
Mm-hmm.
with that
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
because
Emotional
they can't.
boundaries.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm really I think if those are the things like, what didn't help was just talking to the wrong people.
Yeah. I think that's a really important one. Especially that I think is a through line of all of the seasons of this podcast is like I talk about people who aren't safe in the first episode. And I think
Mm,
I think that resonates in every episode, right? Like we encourage talking to people a lot on this podcast. And it's like you have to know who those safe people are, right? And
right.
sometimes you might get it wrong. But I think about it like when I started going to therapy and I really wanted to learn how to create some emotional boundaries, not just with people, but just like everyday things. Like it just felt like everything was so upsetting. And I had a hard time just coping with things that other people seem to be doing effortlessly.
Right.
And And yeah, and so I started to figure out how to like create this bubble around myself that was transparent, like a true bubble, like when you see little bubbles being blown. But it was harder, it's not going to
Hmm.
get broken just by a touch, but it's
Right.
completely transparent. You can see and hear everything. But that bubble goes up around people that, like you're talking about, are not safe. So I'm just like, okay, these are not the people to relay this type of information. They don't get any kind of in depth, serious, heart to heart shit unless
Yes.
I'm coming from a place of overflow and not reservoir, right?
Right.
If I have so much, I can, yeah, oh yeah, I can say these things and I don't need them to hear me or see me.
Right.
I
Right.
don't need, I could just say it and let it land where it lands. And maybe that helps them. Maybe it doesn't, whatever. And then there's other people that you're like, yeah, that bubble doesn't need to come up at all. It can
No.
just shake and go. You're going to be seen. You're going to be heard. Like, so yeah, I really relate to that for sure. Um, why do you think there's so much shame or stigma surrounding abuse in general? I mean, you may not have experienced because you always. It seems like you had your mom to kind of. You were never shamed out of telling your mom. Like you kind of
Right.
had such a core a shamelessness in some, like knowing that these people were doing these things to you and that you could tell your mom. But for people in general, like why do you think there's so much stigma or shame?
Because well, these are just obviously my opinions, but I think that we live in a society that strongly talks about values, quote unquote. Like when you don't deal honestly with an issue and we don't use specifics, we just use I don't want to say feelings, but they call them values, but they're not. They're triggers to make people behave a certain way.
Mm,
And then if you haven't behaved this certain way, the response is on you
mm,
because you didn't uphold these values.
mm-hmm.
You called this upon yourself. So
Right.
I think
You're to blame for whatever
to blame
happens.
for it, um, that very old, if you hadn't been wearing that.
Right.
Um, but I think that because it's perpetuated
Mm-hmm.
in society so much, it's perpetuated in what we see. I mean, things have gotten better in that way. That you're not allowed to shame someone in that way,
Mm-hmm.
but we haven't also. That's a minority. I think if it were the majority
Right.
that was speaking up like that we would,
Right.
but we still say God bless to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm not trying to separate or take away, but there's a heavy way of thinking and being
I think, yeah,
that,
I've been playing with this idea of morality versus ethics
yeah,
and what the difference between morality and ethics are. And to me, I've been playing around this idea that like the society is as a whole very moral obsessed morals
right,
because and
right,
morals to me are probably based in religious or puritanical
right,
subculture, and there's a way
agreed,
to be righteous in that morality
yes,
of those things. And then there's what is ethical, right, which to me is much more uh educationally based, or like how do I want to say it? So if you're dealing with ethics, it's gonna, to me it removes a god figurehead or any kind of like religious, and is just like, is this right or wrong, not based on a book, not based on an on a religion per se, but more almost like academia based of like, is
mhm,
this right
mhm,
or wrong? And in those instances things become more gray, but then there are things that are just non-negotiables, right? Which is
right,
hurting people is wrong.
right,
Now it can get
right,
very gray, like what if your life's in danger? What if this? Like, yeah, we can get into all of those, but like
right,
it removes some of that extra weight. And so I think a lot of times I'm like, people are very busy being moral and they are not being ethical. And so you'll hear me say a lot of times too, like I'll question things. Was this immoral or is it unethical? Was this abuse or was it unethical? Was this criminal or was it unethical? Right? I play on those two sides. To me, what you're saying reminds me of
Yeah.
that theory that I've kind of been turning over in my head. Um, so yeah, I think what you're saying is there is kind of a cultural propping up of protecting abusers under this guise of values or a false morality
Yes.
um, that doesn't serve victims.
No, and it makes so many other people complicit. It and you know, because of how we still talk about women and women that are propping these guys up.
Right.
Women that are propping, not that there aren't women abusers, let's be clear, but for
Yeah.
the majority, for the most part,
Hmm.
um, and how complicit we are without even knowing it
Right.
sometimes. We
Women
say things,
oppressing women, women
yes, and you're just
supporting.
like,
Yeah.
did you just not hear yourself? Did you, you know? So I think that I don't even know. Sometimes I don't know if it's the shame is fear
Yeah.
based,
Yeah.
out of fear that this, if I say this, this now means, and
Right.
if I say this now, everybody knows,
Yeah.
and there's a weight to things like there's a
Hmm.
that you carry, unfortunately.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that that's also a choice that
Hmm.
people should be given that choice, shall I say? That
Hmm.
if you don't have to be the poster child.
Right.
That's not your jam, then I get it. But if you
Hmm.
want to speak up and say your piece, but you don't have to run around with, it on your chest all the time.
Right.
Um, but it is very challenging um to stand up against all of that.
Hmm. Yeah. I agree. Especially when there's power dynamics at play. We could go on and on about that. But yeah,
We
that's
girl,
another whole thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a whole
Yeah.
nother pod.
It is. And actually, it is about that time. I should be wrapping it up. You and I
Okay.
could go on for many, many hours. But I do have one last question for you. It
Okay.
is tradition on the pod at the end of each episode for me to ask my interviewee. We don't give advice on the pod, but we often give suggestion. And I do want to ask you if you have any suggestion for anybody who might be suffering in any kind of various abusive situation right now,
Mm,
or even in their recovery from abuse. Do you have a
right.
suggestion?
I it's personally, I always try and look out. Like I look for it. Like if I feel something's not right, I look,
See something, say
say
something. If you
something.
see something, say something.
There's the song. Okay.
Hmm.
Yes, see something, say something. And then I do my best to befriend someone in a way that they can drop a hint.
Like you like, are you saying that you try to offer yourself up and let it be known to people that you're a safe person?
Yeah, I
Okay.
absolutely do.
Hmm.
And and I don't I don't need you to go, I was dot 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 dot. Or it can just be whatever, like something subtle.
Hmm.
If we're struggling and we, find a way to take baby steps to fight for your life,
Hmm.
you know, because that's really what it is. It's a fight for your life. And
Hmm.
if I could, sometimes I wish I could go back and see things, re-see things, that people are going through that I had no clue that they were being abused or
Hmm.
hurt. Um, find a way, get a note,
Hmm.
find a way. But in the don't ever give up.
Hmm.
Don't ever give up. Start like it's hard to combat abusers. It's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to combat abusive thoughts. Because they're always in your head. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do we fight that? And you just gotta keep talking to yourself. Just keep talking to yourself and believe I'm gonna get out of this somehow. I'm gonna get out of this. There is hope for me. Because once we've lost hope, we've lost.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to give hope is what I try and do all the time. Because sometimes with a little bit of hope comes ingenuity, comes um, a spark, something.
Yeah. Yeah.
With no hope, we're dead in the water.
Yeah. Um, Sometimes when I'm in a place of like hopelessness,
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm desperate to get out of it, I'm desperate to start climbing the ladder out of that hole. I do this thing and it's going to sound funny, but it works. I get to hope and I say, I hope this person gets hit by a bus. I hope.
okay,
I
I
hope
like it.
this way. You know what I'm saying? And like it's funny, but it's also kind of true and it does start to get me to hope because that is future focused, right?
Right.
I hope terrible things for this person. And it's like, yeah, it's not like, super great that I'm hoping terrible things on people, but it is hope and it is future focused. And it is not, I'm in now revenge, which is a ladder rung up from depression and helplessness.
Right.
Um, because you don't just like take a quantum leap when you're in the fucking hole.
No,
Yeah.
it takes a lot to get out of
Little
it,
baby
and
steps. Yeah.
everybody's different, and I don't judge it. I just try and, with my sister, we don't in 2025, we don't judge. We observe.
Yeah. Yeah.
We observe, and then we make
Yeah. Yeah.
moves based on that observation. But
Yeah.
I'm not judging. Whatever. Okay.
I said that all the time. I'm like, this is not a judgment, it's just an observation.
Just an observation. Yes. This is exactly where we are right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I wish I could just scoop up and help everybody. Wish I had, like, I could make something where people could, like, ask for help,
Hmm.
you know, without getting found out.
Hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, the fact that we have to think like that makes me crazy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. All right. Well, you heard it from Terri. Don't give up. Got to find that hope, and she's a source of hope oftentimes. And like every other person I've had on the podcast, we link people's social media, ways to get in touch with those people. So, Terry's obviously a safe person if you ever want to reach out and just say, hey.
absolutely.
Yeah. Terri, thank you for your second time podding, your
Yay!
two-time podding. I really appreciate you spending time with me. You're a very busy lady, and we're especially busy nowadays with our
Mm,
stuff coming up. So I really appreciate you taking the time and giving us your experience on Gray Maybe.
thank you for having me. I love that you do this, and I would only come because how can we help? How can we
Yeah.
make a difference in the world? And that's what I think you're doing. And you do it with so many people. There's so many lives that you touch that you've made such a huge difference. And I think this podcast is just one of the many ways that you do it. So I'm honored to be on here for a second time. Thank
Oh,
you.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And, I think we're both aligned in that big time. We
Yeah,
kind of do that when we teach. We kind of do that in the world in our respective ways and oftentimes together. So I love that.
agreed. Thank you.
Terri has been so many things to me: a teacher, a mentor, a bestie, a peer, a dance partner, a producer, a choreographer. But mostly, she's been a strong role model as a woman. She is a helper. Tirelessly, she is helping, and usually in the hardest way, which is actually showing up to do all of the things. She has had so many adverse experiences, but it hasn't smudged her rose colored glasses one bit. In fact, it seems to only have made her more helpful, considerate, and empathetic. I'm so fortunate to know her, have her in my life, and be able to call her a friend. Terri's mission is always about evolution, never arriving, always striving. If you have ever been a student of hers, you know this for a fact. I say it on the pod, and I'll say it again. Terri brings value everywhere she goes, and she is invaluable. I can't thank her enough for her endless support and that she has lent her valuable time here on Gray Maybe. If you're listening to this episode and you have or are currently experiencing abuse, I'm sorry and welcome. I hope this helps your journey. You're not alone. Just a reminder for anyone who needs to hear it. The definition of abuse is when someone causes us harm or distress. It can take many forms, ranging from disrespect to causing someone physical or mental pain. It can occur in someone's home, a care home, a hospital, or a public place. Often, the people who commit abuse are taking advantage of a special relationship. The legal definition of abuse is as follows. The term abuse means the knowing infliction of physical or psychological harm, or the knowing deprivation of goods or services that are necessary to meet essential needs, or to avoid physical or psychological harm. You don't need to have been punched in the face or sexually assaulted to experience abuse. Know that whatever you are feeling, there are those among us that have probably felt it too. You are not alone. If you're listening and you have someone you love in your life that is enduring abuse, you are also welcome. You are also not alone. It's hard to watch someone be hurt and feel powerless to help them. I've included various links in the show notes for help and support. If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you were able to find something relatable in today's episode. If you'd like to show your support for this podcast, consider donating on Spotify or rate, share, comment, and subscribe. As I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, this is also a social experiment to see if in telling my stories, I can embolden listeners to share their stories. If you'd like to share a story on this topic, anonymous or otherwise, on the podcast, please email graymaybestories@gmail.com. graymaybestories@gmail.com. Thank you to everyone who helped make this Gray Maybe podcast happen. Producer and editor Roderick Barge. Cover photo by Jose Perez. Music licensed by Pixabay. Special counsel Jada Ellingham and Roderick Barge. Special shout out to supporters Patty Olgan and Jeremy McCullen. Until next time, bye for now.